I want to share this short reading by Rumi. Rumi, in the 13th century in Iran, was a Persian poet and a Sufi and a mystic. He writes, "This is now. Now is all there is. Don't wait for the then. Strike the spark, light the fire. Sit at the beloved's table. Feast with gusto and refill your drink, and then dance. Dance the way the branches of jasmine and cypress dance in the spring wind. The green earth is your cloth. Tailor your robe with dignity and grace. Dance." Imagine you have a book, a journal for the new year, and you have your favorite pen, and you turn the page in your journal to the first page, and you write Chapter 1, January 1st. I would ask for you to write this title, Opportunity, and then take a deep breath. We all have opportunities here for crossing thresholds into the new, for inviting into our lives that which we need and moving towards it. And I know for me, when I write a list of what the opportunities are for me for the new year, often it looks like a list of resolutions. They are the goals that are important to me. They are the goals of things that I've resolved to bring about and yearn for in my year. For me, they're not petty or silly. They're life-changing. Some of the things that I write down are things like exercise. And yes, I know that it's the right thing to do, and the doctors say to do it. They also say to drink 64 ounces of water a day with the big jug. But there are other things on my list, like read to my daughter at night. Make date nights happen with my partner. No excuses. Set time aside to play with my friends and to make time for fun. Get rid of all the junk that I don't ever seem to use. And another for me, which is so important, is to make time for creating art. I wrote down specifically, make a corner in the dining room for my paints and my easel so I can paint when I have a short minute. I know that these things are like a to-do list, but what they really are ways for me to come alive again. I've had some successful days and weeks and months and years past when those things I've written down in my book do come to be. But sometimes those lists, like resolutions, don't always happen. And I understand, though, that the positive intent behind those resolutions is that I come back to life. There's a wonderful Chinese proverb that says, the remedy for dirt is soap and water. The remedy for dying is living. So I want to come back to life, and these things on my list help me feel more alive. They're like icebergs floating in the cold glacial bays. From afar, we see the iceberg and the water line. And as we get closer, I don't know if you've ever seen an iceberg up close, but as you get closer and closer, you can see through the water and see the deep blue of the iceberg below. The basic physics principle of buoyancy determines that approximately 90% of the iceberg is underwater. Archimedes, born in Sicily in the year 287 BC, derived a mathematical framework of this principle while taking a bath and pondering his own body volume. As he entered in the bath and displaced the water, he realized then that he could measure the volume of displacement. The story goes that he stood up naked and said, "Eureka!" Well, our resolutions on our books, of our first pages of our books, are like the tips of the iceberg. These resolutions, these hopes, are the visible aspirations of the fundamental things that keep us buoyant in our life. If we exercise more, if we have a more healthy diet, if we drink more water, what we are seeking is health and vitality. We want to feel alive. If we feel in our homes that we are full of vestiges of the past and things are cluttered in our corners, then we are not leaving space for new things to come and to be welcomed. We want to have space to breathe. If we want time for family and friends, then we want to seek those who make us laugh and make us smile. We're asking to be brought back to the moment, to ourselves and to connection. What we are seeking is more joy in our lives. And we want to be less busy. That is when we're asking for a means to be in the present moment, when we feel our hearts beat, and we can be present to breathing in and breathing out. When we breathe in, we bring in love, and we breathe out, we breathe out peace. There's an unknown writer that once penned, "Life is not measured by the number of breaths we take, but by the moments that take our breath away." I love that. That was our first chapter in our book. And our second chapter might be threshold moments. Those moments when you move beyond from where you are towards something new, towards the things we hunger for. Many of those resolutions in that first chapter are pledges to ourselves, so we can move from what moors us in the old and to make room for in the new. Author and painter and retired Unitarian Universalist minister Robert Fulgum. Some of you might know his books. He's very prolific, and one that was very popular was All You Needed to Know You Learned in Kindergarten. I don't know if that was the exact title, but it's really close. He writes this: "From birth to death, our lives are filled with endings and beginnings, little deaths and revivals. Each day we go to sleep, to wake again into the glorious light of stars long ago alive, now dead. We all leave our childhood homes, our jobs, our divorces, our lost friendships, our miscarriages and funerals, to come back alive and kicking. We are stubborn," he writes, "and we find ways to reach out for new things, new jobs, new friends, new marriages, and new reasons for scrambling on. Crossing these thresholds is a rite of passage." He said, "Revival is a lifelong friend." How meaningless our life can feel, only to soon be filled with hope in the days to come. Our capacity to take whatever life dishes out and to come back is never to be underestimated. For all of those exits, there is also an entrance, the threshold into a new day, Daily, we redeem ourselves in unspoken rituals of renewal. Daily, we get up and go to work in the construction business of building and repairing and remodeling our lives. The ritual of revival has many names. For some, it is to be born again. For some, it is to be healed. And for others, it is just for getting our act together. Whatever the name, however large or small the act, the urge to reassemble the fragments of our lives into being whole again is the same. So we move from those old habits into the new, and these habits are like stories from our past, like the lion who internalized the lies who were told that he came to believe so sadly. He did move towards freedom with boldness and leave the old stories and the old tapes that he had learned to believe behind. I don't know about you, but I can still remember the voices of those voices in my own life. Some from childhood, but many over time became my own voice. And it is my job, even in my adulthood, to undo those tapes and to leave them behind. How important it is for me to remember that the lock on the cage was never locked. Our way of being in the world is a collection of our stories and our habits. These perceptions are learned and reinforced over the years. They can help us compartmentalize the painful and allow us to move forward to what is right. And these habits, these old habits we've had, they're not a way of being lazy. But it is important for us to remember that we can analyze them and say, they're not working for me anymore. Leaving these old ways is a type of courage, of stepping into the unknown often. Robert Fulgum writes, as life-giving as the act is of moving towards the new, it is often painful. And in these moments, we recognize from deep within that when we let ourselves acknowledge that our lives must change for us to be happy or to even stay alive is the deepest act of courage. I remember for myself in my own life that moment, kind of like a strike of lightning, when I knew for my own emotional survival that I had to move out of my childhood home. I was 19, and my parents' marriage had fallen apart, and my parents were just not able to function, and I needed to go out and take care of myself. I had little money or means to do so, and I had hoped to go to college that year, but it was not in the cards, and I had to take a year off. And the chalice just went out. So I'm going to light it again. Well, maybe not. Burn. That lightning moment when I knew I needed to leave that home was a scary time for me, and sure many of you have stories that are similar, especially when you're younger and you realize that the home in which you grew up in is one you needed to leave, not just for becoming an adult, but for health and for self-identity. Many of you here have been brokenhearted when you realize that perhaps a marriage or an intimate relationship needed to end. Many of you might know that freeing yourself from those relationships allowed you to become ultimately whole and who you are now. All forms of recovery from abuse, from heartbreak, from addiction, from numbing habits and acts of harm. Moving away from those into the abyss of the unknown is self-care. That self-care can take years, even a lifetime, and often it is day in and day out. And in those long nights of the soul, when we all yearn for renewal, we wake each day to choose life, to choose the new day, every day. For revival is a lifelong friend. So I invite you today to walk over that threshold from starting with something new, from a resolution of seeking life, and into that threshold of the new day. I hope that what calls you and beckons you to the other side allows you to breathe deeply as you breathe in and you breathe out. Each day that we choose to do so is an opportunity for us to move forward to life itself. Each day is like asking for resolutions made to become a beacon for where we're going, like the sun rising, and like our deep breaths, and even with self-forgiveness, to allow ourselves, when we don't meet that resolution, to keep trying and to keep striving, for this is our human endeavor. Just like the story we said with the puppets about the lion, and the teaching children about breathing in and breathing out. That mantra, like a prayer, allows us to teach our children that it is okay to let go and to start over and to falter and to try again. And as we teach them to find strength in the human endeavor itself. Would you join me as I finish this service with a moment of meditation and prayer? In this sacred space, we gather in a shared prayer for what brings us to life. The answers we seek are not found in society. They are not found in the church. They arise out of the deep inner space of each person's heart. Each week as we gather as a community in support of each other, we support ourselves on our personal journeys. In these rituals in which we collectively participate in, flows from the life of the individual into the congregation. That is where the congregation comes from. It is when we support each other as we invite each other over that threshold week after week towards what we seek. When we breathe in peace and we breathe out love and we breathe in awareness and we breathe out what we can let go of. And we breathe in forgiveness, and we breathe out support for each other. May it be so. Amen and blessed be.